Hey everyone, thanks for joining. We've got a lot of exciting content today to help you consider what we call the last mile of tax planning. It's often overlooked, and it's really how to communicate the value of tax planning to your clients. We're going to talk about some science about tax planning, dig into some challenges with communicating its value to clients, and then share best practices that we see and that we use every day to help clients walk through the real life value that they can get from tax planning. Before we get started, just to introduce ourselves, we are part of Plan Scout, which also has our own proprietary planning tool called SIPS. Plan Scout creates turnkey financial plans for advisors in as fast as 3 business days that include tax planning. It also includes some visuals that you'll see. We're going to walk through an example of that. And we're building all of this in our proprietary planning tool called SIPS, which stands for Structured Income Planning System. It's been around for over 15 years. And you'll be able to see the really great value that you can deliver with the high quality planning tool, high quality plan that you're going to see from SIPS. We created Plan Scout because what we saw as an opportunity in the market is that not all advisors are great at building plans. And some advisors want to have something visual that goes along with it. So with Plan Scout, we're really trying to help more advisors deliver great plans for their clients. All right. On the call today, we've got me. I'm Rhaegar Kailani. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Plan Scout. I've also got John Michael Lust, who runs our operations and planning team, and James Gallagher, who is our dreamer, innovator, SIPS founder, former engineer, who is also a financial advisor himself.
Yes.
And he's going to give us lots of real life examples and best practices that he uses every day. Great. So before we jump in, I think we need to look at what are the ways that planning can add value and add wealth for clients. We summarize it in four high-level buckets. The first one is something that I think everybody knows about and thinks through when they do a plan, which is how do you optimize when to take Social Security and what to do with the pension, if there is a pension. So not only the timing, when to file, and what options with it. So that adds some value. Even more than that is the ability to have a really clear budget and goals incorporated in your plan. And the reason that's important is spending later in life can actually either really help or break a plan, depending if you're spending more or spending less. The third thing is when you have a good plan, you can optimize your asset allocation so that money that you don't need for a long time, you can let it grow in a more aggressive way versus the money that you're going to need in a more short-term time frame, you can invest that more conservatively. Finally, what we see also is tax planning. And when you have a good plan, you can really optimize when to take withdrawals from the right types of registrations. And we see that tax planning is actually the biggest wealth driver in plans that we create. So we're really excited to talk about tax planning today. All of our plans include all of these, but tax planning, as you can see, has a huge impact. And you're going to see a live example of why and how. So before we jump in, let's talk about the planning process, just to make sure we're all on the same page. The first thing in the planning process is creating the plan. And to do that, you need to be a little bit or a lot of an accountant, a little bit maybe of some mathematician as you're creating this plan. The second thing that you need to do is you've got to craft that story. And as a planner, as a financial advisor, you've got to craft a story in a way that your clients understand it. So you almost need to be a little bit of a graphic designer. And then the third step is actually communicating and connecting that plan with your client. And for this, it's really about being a psychologist. And so if you think of these really diverse skill sets that you need to craft a great plan, to come up with that story and communicate it with your client, it's pretty difficult to have all of the right mix of all of these skill sets.
Yeah,
So
man, Rhaegar, I know I'm a math guy. I'm an engineer, for God's sakes. And, I get guys coming in and they say, I'm better at this than you are. And I start doing the math and I can always create the great plan. But I'm not a graphic designer. And you know, one of the things that you guys have brought to the party is much clearer, much more concise, conceptual pieces that sit on top of the planning process that really help craft a better story. And I think that I'm not a psychologist, but I've been called one by some of my clients, because that's where all the magic happens right there, is the ability to then help them educate themselves on what we're really talking about. This is a great slide you've created here.
Great. Well, let's talk about, James, let's talk about some of the challenges about connecting tax planning to clients. I mean, I think the first one's pretty obvious, as I think we all know. Taxes are complex. And so communicating the value as you're suggesting a different way of taxes or tax planning, it might be hard for clients to understand why. So I think that's pretty obvious, but I think we always get that. This next one I think is interesting because, James, you experienced this a lot in your practice.
Yeah, I'll go back to one of my first clients, and I started as an advisor 20 years ago. I started in a tax office, so for me, it always was built on taxes. And I can remember I sat down with this client that had a fair bit of money, and I showed her a way to save. I think it was $6,000 or $7,000 a year in taxes. The amount of money she had, that was nothing compared to the amount of returns that she would have. But that emotional connection to that $7,000 was incredible. And it's interesting. She's still a client today. She's now pushing into her 90s, and she is still talks about the fact that she doesn't pay anything in taxes, and her kids and their kids' friends. And all their wealthy friends are all clients of mine now. And the story continues. That emotional connection to saving money in taxes is incredibly important to people.
Love that. I think this next one came from you too. This concept of you've got to be two people.
Right. Well, I have a tax practice. Waterstone Tax is a tax practice, and we spend 3 months of the year trying to figure out what people did last year and be a historian and try to help them out and save them, you know, $100 or $6,000 on their tax return or whatever it is. But really, the juice that you're going to show today is not what we saved them last year. It's about looking into the future and getting things aligned, doing stuff to stay away from large tax problems, whether they're in business or whether they're in various ways of defining income. But what we're talking about today is the planning around retirement, and people make huge mistakes there. Be a fortune teller and help them get around that.
Love that. So this concept of prescribing a solution too good to be true, you know, this is kind of like you're pulling magic out, because if the clients don't understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, or how the recommendations impact their plan, it will seem too good to be true. They're going to say, I don't believe it. I don't believe that I can actually save that much in taxes, or my accounts are going to grow to these certain dollar amounts. It's you gotta really help bring them along and educate them along the way. Finally, a lot of advisors talk about how sometimes they put these cash flow plans in front of clients and their eyes just glaze over because it's too much information. And candidly, for clients, when they go into this information overload, they don't do anything. That's the status quo. I'm just not going to do anything. And so you've really got to be that psychologist, connect them with the value, and make sure they understand where and how that value is being delivered. All right, James. So let's talk now. We got a few slides. We'll talk about how do you actually communicate tax planning value to clients. So we've got a few slides. We're going to walk through some of these best practices. The first one, hopefully this is obvious. You can't do tax planning just for a year. You've got to do it for every single year in their plan. And that means you've got to use a cash flow plan to do it. There's lots of tools out there that are goals-based. But it's challenging if it's just a goals-based plan. It's challenging to see these opportunities to save on taxes. And so if you look at what we talk about a lot is how much additional value PlanScout adds in their plans. Here's just a sample highlight here of some of these benefits, but it's really big. And you're going to see a case example later that are even bigger impact than these. But James, you feel this all the time, right? You've used other planning tools, goals-based ones.
If you do your tax presentation by opening up a tax return and, you know, start talking on the 1040 about what you're going to do to help them, that can be helpful, can be part of the details. But as you said, you need to have those high level conceptuals. I have found that there's no way that you can create a concept and say this is the best thing for you. The only way you're really going to be able to assess this is by taking and looking over time at what's going to happen in the next 10 years or the next 30 years, whatever. You're going to see that in the plans we're going to show you in a couple of minutes. But it ties back to that idea of taxes are complex. Well, the way to take the complexity out is to take and say, hey, if we do this, in 10 years, you're going to have 5 million. If we do this in 10 years, you're going to have, a lot more. And so that cash flow analysis is key to how this all works. And that's the only way it's going to work. I can't even imagine trying to convince a client by just explaining how the tax laws work. So,
yeah, I think it's also interesting, James, that when you have a good cash flow plan that includes tax planning in it, it's easier for clients to see the cost and benefit, especially if they're doing something like a tax-free conversion. You can actually see it in the plan. You can see it modeled out. They can start to make decisions for themselves because you're giving them better tools to see that. So let's talk about the second one. The second one, and this is really not necessarily a planning focus. This is more just about information consumption. One, it's starting with high-level visuals and then go to the details when you need them. If you read any business publications like Harvard Business Review, there's a lot of science and a lot of case studies around how successful businesses and successful executives are very structured with how they receive updates and how they consume information so that they can make decisions quickly. And it all boils down to getting them information at a high level, using as much visuals as you can to help illustrate points, and then diving into the details only when you need to. So if there's 10 items for an executive and there's only one that they're curious about, they only have to look at the details for that one item. And in the same way, we should use these same best practices with clients. If you think about using a visual that explains what your recommendation is going to do, how the recommendations impact the plan, and then the client has questions about a specific aspect, they're giving you permission to now go deep and now go into the details. So they're eager to get there. And also, you might have multiple folks in a household, and not everyone wants to go into those technical details. So start with those high-level visuals, hit the salient points, and then go to those details only if you need them.
Right. That was a message basically to me. Thank you, Rhaegar.
Sounds good. The third one is, and this seems obvious, but use terms that clients understand. There's a lot of probability of success that's used in planning. And the amount of our population that actually understands that is extremely small. People don't understand not only what probability of success is, but what does it mean to them? You need to use terms like, what if you live longer? What if you spend more? What if inflation's high? Or what if you have poor market returns? These are examples that clients get. They understand that. But if you tell them a probability of success is changing a little bit, it's difficult for them to internalize that and change their behavior.
Yeah, they think they internalize it, Rhaegar. But then I always tell them this story. I said, all right, we've just done a plan and eMoney has told us we have a 95% chance of success. And I go, what does that mean to you? And they go, well, that sounds pretty good. And I go, okay, we're going to get on a plane and we're going to fly to Colorado and the pilot's going to come on and they're going to come on and say, great news for everybody on the plane. We have a 95% chance that we're going to make it to Colorado. Who's staying on the plane? Right. And so even though they might think they understand it, they don't. And it's not that meaningful. Well, it's much better to use some of the terms that we use in our planning process, I believe. And that's what we're going to talk about.
Great. I love that. I would not get on that plane either. The fourth thing, because taxes are complex and clients are the ones making decisions, it's important to have a focus that you're educating and empowering them to make decisions for themselves. A great example of this is the amount and pace of tax-free conversions, whether you're using Roth or insurance products for getting that tax-free conversion. The amount that clients want to do, it's often not the best mathematical option. And James, you experience this in your practice all the time.
Yeah, you can. I had a gentleman the other day and I showed him, I think it was a $3 or $4 million savings over a lifetime of taxes. And, but he goes, yeah, but I'm going to pay an extra $100,000 in taxes for the next 3 years. And I go, and they don't make the right decision. They don't make the mathematically best decision. And so that's not what we focus on. We focus on how to educate them on it and let them make their own decision. They are happy and empowered when they're making that decision with good information. And so we help them and explain goods and bads, and it works much better when we empower the client.
Absolutely. Finally, the last one we're going to hit on today is using your plan as a roadmap for regular updates. And, whether that's updating actual values on a yearly basis, or reforecasting a plan because, there's new events for a client. It helps make the conversation about value anchored on the plan and the value that you're delivering with that plan, and not anything else that they might hear about. I mean, James, you probably experience this all the time too. It must be such a relief to talk about.
We do 100% of our annual reviews are done with planning. But back to the tax focus piece. I mean, if you've got somebody in the middle of a big Roth conversion and they just paid $50,000 in taxes last year, and you're saying, yeah, you need to convert another 180. They're like, are you sure this is a good idea, James? And then you pull back out and you show them the plan, and you show them you're ahead of the plan. You show them that everything is going okay, and you show them the total value. Again, a year later, this is the most powerful piece of the practice that I have. We don't have any marketing, any referral system. What we have is our roadmaps that we show clients each year, and invariably they get excited again about what we do and what is good for them. And that the circle continues. So
I love that. I love it. Well, let me summarize those. So we're just shared 5 of them today. These are the 5 that we think are the most relevant proven techniques to communicate tax value. But just to hit on them again, the first one is you got to use cash flow planning, and you've got to incorporate tax planning in that cash flow plan. That helps you project out the value of choices that they can make today, and how that may impact them in the future. Second is you got to use high level visuals to communicate these concepts and to educate and empower clients. But you need those visuals to start with, and only go to the details when you need them. You might need them for support. You might need them for questions on a specific narrow thing. That's when you want to go to the details, because they're going to want to go see them at that point. The third thing is talk in terms that clients understand. Don't use probability. Don't use advanced math terms. Use things that they can understand, and also that they understand how to control them, like spending more money. That's easy to understand how that's controlled. Or inflation, where they understand inflation, even though they can't control it. The fourth was to make sure you're educating your clients and empowering them to make decisions for themselves. You'll have more success because the clients will feel like you've coached them, you've educated them, you've shown them how to make good decisions or better decisions. And then finally, use that plan for a regular update. It'll make your retention rate very high. As James was sharing, it provides an awesome opportunity to continue to reinforce and reiterate the value that your plans have, the tax planning value that's in there. So let's spend a little bit of time now. We're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about a case that we did. John Michael's going to walk us through the case. We're going to add some more context as we go. So with that, John Michael, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Rhaegar. Okay, so before we get into the plan itself, let's just kind of orient ourselves on the hypothetical household that we're building this plan for. So we've got Kyle and Megan. They're both in their early 60s. They're getting ready to retire in a few years, and so they're thinking about their retirement plan. They've got one adult child named Alice, and this is a fairly high net worth household. Kyle and Megan are both making over $100,000 a year. They've been diligent savers. You can see they've got $3.5 million in savings. We've forecasted what their Social Security benefits are going to be, and they got a pretty reasonable retirement income goal of $175,000 a year after taxes. So they're being responsible and trying to live within their means. Right now, they're in the 24% marginal tax bracket. And in addition to that $175,000 for their basic lifestyle, they also want to make sure they're managing their income taxes and they want to leave an inheritance. So this is where we start out. Let's take a look and see what their plan would look like. So when we build our plans and kind of in the spirit of bringing the client along and providing education with what we're doing and why we're doing it, we always want to look at where is the client right now before applying any planning techniques. Like, what is their current situation if they were to retire with their current portfolio as it is? And we can see that for Colin, Megan, it looks like they're in a pretty good spot. You can see the black line on the graph is that after-tax target income, and the stacked columns are showing that their sources of income are always meeting or exceeding that goal. So they're achieving that goal, and we can see their savings. You know, they started with 3.5 million, and it looks like they would end the plan at about 3.8 or 3.9. They're taking RMDs. They're following the conventional wisdom withdrawal strategy that a lot of people are told. So they're withdrawing from their non-qualified savings first, and then they're withdrawing from their tax deferred savings. This would also forecast about $1.5 or $1.6 million in total lifetime income taxes.
Hey, John Michael, one of the interesting things that you guys came up with is a way to kind of the plan summary. It shows, the after-tax total income. So that's $11 million worth of income over the life of the plan, right?
Yes.
And then they still got 3.8 or 9 million left when they pass away. And you've added that together to kind of, taking more income during your life and having more left over later, both add up to value in the plan. And so you've created that value statement of lifetime estate value, which adds them together. I think it's really clever to be able to help people assess, but that still doesn't explain the other mystery that goes on, which is the total taxes paid. And so you've isolated that to be able to analyze those from plan to plan, right?
Yep. Exactly. That's exactly right, James. So the lifetime estate value captures all of the value that portfolio is providing. Having that out there as a discrete value on the slide lets us see the impact of what we're doing in the plan, whether we're applying stressors to the plan or applying optimizations to the plan. We can see how that changes the lifetime estate value, and then that includes the taxes, right? Because we're including after-tax income, but isolating the taxes as their own number can be interesting, especially for clients that are concerned about managing taxes, to see that, because we can also see how that changes by exposing that number.
What I also love on here, John Michael, is as we've benchmarked our plans with other plans that advisors build themselves in tools like eMoney, Money Guide, Right Capital, this is the plan that they come up with. And for this client, this is good, right? They've got a good plan. Looks like they're going to make it. This is where we start. So just wait and see how much more value we're going to add. And way more, again, way more value beyond what the status quo is, what advisors are building themselves in these other tools. Right. So with that, let's keep rolling.
Okay. So this is the plan after we've done some optimizations to it. So we did some Social Security optimization and we did some revised budgeting for the later years of the plan. But the big thing that we do as part of our planning process is aligning the client's investments to the time horizons when they need that income. So I think, for a lot of people, if they're working and they're saving, they're putting their money away in a more aggressive portfolio so it can grow. And then when they get close to retirement, they tune that risk profile back down to be a more conservative portfolio because they want to have that market protection, which is very understandable. But if you've got your whole portfolio in one risk profile, you could either be exposing that portfolio to more market risk than is appropriate, or you might be too much on the conservative side and that portfolio might not be capturing the market growth it needs to last for 15 or 20 or 30 years of retirement. So what we will do is analyze the portfolio and we'll divide it up into buckets, and we'll say, how much of your portfolio do you need to meet your short-term income needs? And that will be invested conservatively for market protection, volatility protection. How much do you need for your medium-term income needs? Let's invest that more in a moderate portfolio? How much do you need for your long-term income needs? That can be invested more aggressively so you can capture the market growth you need to make sure your savings are lasting for that whole retirement period. And then once we know how much of the portfolio we actually need to satisfy that $175,000 a year target income, we know that everything left can be put in a discretionary bucket or a fund bucket. So if they want to do anything else like travel or pay for tuition for grandkids, or even if they just want to have that nest egg grow to pass down to heirs, that's where that discretionary bucket kicks in. And that can also be invested more aggressively because we don't need that to meet their income needs.
I think the other thing, John Michael, is I love the squiggly lines. Of course, the top squiggly line is the short term and it moves down to long and discretionary. There's another subtlety happening here, especially for the tax planner. Really importantly, the top stuff is the non-qualified and the bottom is the qualified assets, the taxable assets. And you've woven those together to the right time frames to master them in the plan and optimize the tax impacts of those.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean, isn't that what's happening in here?
Exactly right. So for a lot of clients who are following the conventional wisdom strategy, their effective tax rate is going to be pretty high while they're working. And then once they retire and start using their non-qualified savings, that tax rate they're paying is going to decrease. And then once they turn retirement or to RMD age, those taxes are typically going to increase again because they've let those IRAs grow so much. If they've been good savers, those RMDs can be substantial. And in some cases, larger than they actually need for their income. So what we will do is we will weave those together. We'll try to take income proportionately between the non-qualified side and the tax deferred side of the portfolio, whether that's just going to be as income going to the client to meet the income goal, or particularly if it's a tax client, that tax deferred income we're taking is in the form of tax-free conversions.
So John Michael, just looking at some of the numbers on here with the current and proposed, I mean, there's a ton more value that's now being created because we're letting these investments grow. Looks like they're also paying a lot more in taxes, going from 1.6 million to about 4.8. So you could just chalk that up to a good problem to have. But I think there's more that we can do here to address that. So you want to talk about the tax-free conversion we did?
So this is really where a lot of the techniques come together, right? Because you do the asset allocation, and a lot of times because you have more in the portfolio, you've now created more of a tax problem for the client. So this is where you have a real opportunity to show the benefit of a tax-free conversion. And you can see on the graph with that red dotted line, if the client hadn't done that Roth conversion, that effective tax rate they're paying is going to keep increasing over their retirement period because it's driven by the increase in those RMDs. By doing a Roth conversion, you can say, sure, we're paying more in taxes upfront in those first few years, but by the time we start RMDs, that Roth conversion is done, and now we're at a lower tax rate for the rest of the retirement period. And this is going to pay off for them in terms of cumulative taxes paid by their late 70s. You can see the break-even point. So not only are we looking at the tax rates here and seeing where are the low tax years where we've got room to do a conversion, we're also looking at how much should we convert. And as you can see down in the details, how much per year they should be converting in order to achieve this value. And so if we go back to the plan summary, doing this Roth conversion actually adds another $4 million in savings to the portfolio because that money can stay there in the Roth instead of coming out in the form of RMDs. But we've also cut the taxes in half. We've gone from 4.8 down to $2.4 million. So saving $2.4 million for a client can be a really impactful message to share, as I'm sure James can attest to.
Yeah, one of the kinds of people that sit in front of me when we're showing plans, one kind of investor is the one that hates paying taxes. In this case, read that top line again. It just says the Roth conversion will save $2.4 million in taxes. We can go with the other plan if you like. That's fine. That's not a problem for me. We'll manage your money either way. But do you really want to pay the IRS an extra $2.4 million that you don't need to?
Yeah,
that excites some clients a lot.
It's interesting too, because when you look at the payback in here, and you can see it on the graph, once that the gray shaded area and the orange shaded area, once you start to see the orange, that's when the payback starts, because that's the cumulative taxes paid. And that's, 15 years out for this client, 10, 15 years. That's a pretty long time for payback. So, hitting on these emotional aspects, letting clients make these decisions about what they want to do. But what I also love with this is, maybe this client's not doing the Roth conversion for them because maybe they don't need this money and they might actually be queuing up for the next generation. So, John Michael, take us through this view of the inheritance and view of assets for the next gen.
Yep, exactly. So, as we talked about at the beginning of this case study, not only did these clients want to manage their income taxes, they also wanted to leave an inheritance for their heirs. And so in the current plan, if they have, their do nothing plan, they'd be leaving $3.5 million to those heirs. That's a large sum of money. That's a life-changing amount of money for a lot of people. A big chunk of that's going to be the taxable savings, and they've got about $765,000 in tax deferred savings after they pay the income taxes on that. But with the optimizations that we've put in place with the improved asset allocation and with the Roth conversion, we can take that inheritance and increase that to over $15 million. A huge chunk of that, $13 million of that, is just from the Roth IRA, because we know from our cash flow planning that they how much of their portfolio they actually need for their income needs. And so we know when they do that Roth conversion, it's all of that extra discretionary money that they don't need to live on. So it can just grow in the Roth. They're not taking RMDs out of it. It can just accumulate for the heirs and go to them tax-free. Now, this does possibly create an estate tax problem for them. Right now, the estate tax limit is fairly high, but if that estate tax limit were to go back down to kind of the old levels, they could be in estate tax territory. So one other way we can avoid that or minimize that estate tax liability is by giving gifts to heirs while living. So Kyle and Megan can each give $18,000 per year to their heir or per recipient. So that's a total of $36,000 to their child, Alice. So that's almost $1.3 million over the course of this plan that's been moved out of the estate while Kyle and Megan are still living. That can be money that Alice can use right now or grow or do whatever she wants with it. And if Kyle and Megan wanted to make sure they were under that estate tax threshold, or they wanted to give more assets while they're living, they could give another $36,000 to each grandkid or each other beneficiary that they want to designate. It's a way to pass on that legacy while still living. You're not waiting until you kick the bucket for your heirs to benefit from that wealth, and you're saving on the potential estate taxes that you would pay.
James, how do conversations go when you talk about adding $13 million of value for a client?
Back to the psychologist part of first of all, the math part. This math that you're looking at here has been 15 years of working with several hundred advisors to create techniques that you guys have now expanded into hundreds of advisors. The math also includes all of their different techniques, so that it's getting better and better and better at how to build these plans to really to make a difference and to really capture tax savings. And then crafting, that was the next part of the presentation. You said you had to be able to craft. My problem, I'm an engineer. All the detail behind this is a bunch of spreadsheets that these guys do, and then they build it back up for you, the advisory client. But they've got these lovely presentations that really capture what the essence is. And so now to the psychologist piece, for me to sit down and talk to a client with the slides you've created here and to show them the kind of value that they're going to be able to see, and it's extremely simple and easy to help a client with the decision-making process when you're deciding what to do, what part of what to do. I've had a client that I showed him a similar plan to this, and he said, well, I can't do that. I'm going to be dead in 15 years. He was 60 years old. So I'm going to be dead in 15 years. I'm not going to do any Roth conversion. It's interesting because 3 years later, he's now re-looking at all that. Now he's thinking about doing a big Roth conversion because I keep showing him the plan over and over again, but it doesn't matter to me which way he goes. It's
Right.
helping him with the good information so he can make the decision himself. And then it'll be his idea, and it'll be a great idea at that point in time.
Right, right. Because I mean, we are forecasting what, 30, 40 years in the future here. But this is a great way to just update this plan, right? Update the plan next year and just see what does it look like.
Yeah.
And you have market performance like we did, they're probably gonna have an even bigger estate tax problem.
Yeah.
So it's a great way to not only communicate value, but also to stay connected with your clients, keep them focused on the right thing.
Yep.
Well, so look, what you just saw with those with that sample plan, you can experience that yourself. We're a service-based organization. We are not just a technology tool that you have to figure out. You could, if you reached out to us, we'd have a plan for you ready in a week, and even as fast as 3 days if you sign up with us. And because we're a service-based business, and because it's not a tool you need to figure out how to use, we love offering the first plan for free with no commitment to sign up. This allows you to give it a test drive, whether it's a real client you have that you've had for a while, you just want to give it another look, whether it's a prospect you have coming in or someone you want to make up. That's fine. We love building plans. We love helping advisors deliver great outcomes for their clients. And we think you can do that pretty easily. Here's just what advisors that are working with us are saying today. This concept of instantly launching tax planning is really exciting for them. It's easy to show value, as you saw with those slides. While we didn't go to the details, we could. I didn't want your eyes to glaze over, but obviously we'll do that. We'll go into the details with any advisor that we work with. And look, when you work with us, it's working with people like John Michael and I and our team that are experts and do this every single day. So with that, I hope you learned some best practices today and you got some good takeaways. Please reach out if you'd like to kick the tires by either scanning the QR code, just going to planscout.com, or reaching out to any one of our team members. Thank you and have a great day.